Morning to you. It's midweek and it's another beautiful episode and edition of Family and Values on Galaxy Television. Good morning, Nigeria. Good morning, Lagos. Good morning. Good day to everyone all over the world. I don't know what time and at what point in time you've been watching this, but we believe it's well with you. I was praying that it would be good with you as well. So good morning to you, Lagos fans. How was your day yesterday? No, just me a little. Let me hear you. How was your day yesterday? Wow. Indeed. When the big ones, especially the number one citizen of Nigeria, visited us in Lagos yesterday, there was a divine traffic everywhere you can imagine. But to God be the glory, I'm sure we all got home safe and there was no report of any insecurity. And we give God the praise for that opportunity. So I want to greet you. I want to appreciate God's grace over your life throughout yesterday's activities, especially those who will be behind the wheels, all bearing and driving, pressing as a republic. It is not easy, but I salute you. And those who will be in transport, taking the public transport yesterday, I'm sure it was indeed another with fare. Money was rising from 1,000, 1,500 because we didn't get to the destination and because it's very important. It was really tough, but we will always scale through it. That's why this morning, I just want to encourage you. Every day is a gift. I have set time and time and time. The gift that you went out yesterday, hit the bed, close your eyes, saying you are sleeping, and some led to their death. But you are alive. So it's a gift. Nurture this gift. Appreciate this gift. Give kudos to that man, that God. Okay, let me put it that way. That God who can give that gift without asking you back for nothing, except for you to just appreciate it and show gratitude. That's all it takes from us. You cannot pay for it. I cannot pay for it. No one can pay for the life that we have. But one thing I know is this. This is a gift that you must appreciate, take good care of, nurture, deliver, something perfect. On that note, I welcome you once again to Galaxy Television. And as much as possible, we talk about everything that has to do with your personality, my personality, who and what I stand for, my family, the society, your nation, your tribe, your culture, and your belief. That's all we're discussing. And how you can go, understanding that as a young mind, as a youth, in a society like ours, you need to be ready, you need to be articulate, you need to prepare your mind, you need to adapt into the values that come with you, raising your own child. So we run from Mondays to Friday, 9 a.m. to 10 a.m. And in order to come from our family on Facebook, on YouTube, on our Galaxy application, and we're also on terrestrial UHF 27. So always join us. My name is Gloria Adejoka. My friends call me Gloria. I decided to come natural today, but don't mind me. I'm not always there alone. Because when they decide to abscond or decide to leave you, what do? Life continues. Don't mind that. So bear with me. But to everyone celebrating a happy one birthday shout out on the other. This is coming from Raphael. That man so tall, he's taller than this studio. I've never seen anybody as tall as him. So he's giving a shout out to Yinka Janai. Yinka Janai, happy birthday to you. Many more fulfilling your age. And this is also going to another beautiful talent sister who stepped on the golden floor on a day like this, 28th of May, 2025. Talking about Viola Sharon Onyegoye. Happy birthday to you. And to many others who are celebrating on this beautiful day. We celebrate grace, we celebrate God's love, we celebrate God's gracefulness and faithfulness over your life. You always have to celebrate and have joy in abundance. So happy birthday. And to everyone, happy one anniversary. All the other wishes very best of many more beautiful togetherness, union, and more joy in your home. Okay. So it's time for us to go for our mini feature because yes, is joining us from far away 6 hours, ahead of their own time. So we need to do this as quickly as fast as possible. So let's go family picture over our passage. It's the family and values, and this morning we are discussing a very, very important and crucial topic, and that is blame. To you, how many times have you been blamed for something you have not done, and you feel like they are taking it for granted, or it's like this is the planned work. It happens in a relationship. When the husband is blaming the wife for something, or the wife is also blaming the husband for what they are not sure of. And sometimes it may be true, but how do we put this together? And that is why we're discussing with one wonderful guest of ours who is joining us live from Canada. Lekon Aremoto B has always been my guest on Family and Values, and now he's joining us from Canada. Hello, Oluwalekan. Like I said, good to see you this morning. Thank you for joining us, because this is 6 hours ahead of you guys. And I am so honored. Family and Value were so privileged, and we're not taking it for granted. That is the best time to keep the sweet to joy.
You remember the last time you were in the studio live? What did we tell you? We will get you when you get over there. Family and Values will drag you. So we are still dragging you over there. How you doing? How are the girls?
It's so good to have you. Seriously, we love you, and we pray God will continue to put your foot on a very prosperous path on that country. That's our prayers for you. Lekon Aremoto B is a certified relationship and marriage counselor, and is joining us this morning to talk on blame. What is the definition of blame? As a counselor, someone comes to you and like, he's always blaming me. She's always blaming me for coming back home late, and I have to make money. How do you bring this definition? What do you mean by blame? Then how does blame culture look alike in a family? Blame culture. How does it present itself in a family?
All right. Once again, thank you for the opportunity to be here. Okay. So what is blame? Like it was said in the mini feature, blame is the act of assigning responsibility or fault to someone or sometimes something for a negative outcome or a wrongdoing. Okay, and that can exhibit itself in different settings, whether at work or at home. But from your question, you're focusing on what is like in the house. So when the husband consistently points out what is wrong with the wife, or when the wife consistently points out what is wrong with the husband, then we say that is blame culture. Culture, because the idea of culture is that it has become, like we're taught in social studies, culture is a way of life. So when blame becomes a consistent theme in a relationship, in a marriage, it becomes a blame culture. And then blame culture, of course, cannot produce a healthy marriage. Okay, why? Because the other person will always feel not enough, will always feel less than they should feel in a marriage. Nobody should make the other person feel less, even when they are wrong. Okay, so blame, depending on how it is used, can be a destructive weapon. Now, there's something called constructive blame. Okay, but I'm sure we'll get there as we go along. But generally, blame can be very destructive and can negatively affect relationships if not handled properly. I hope that answers that.
Oh yeah, you have answered that question. But now I want to ask, everybody, just like Olori was saying, everybody puts blame on one life issue or the other. Why do people often resort to blame in life issues? You see somebody doing a mistake, the mistake is glaring, and they say, oh, I'm blaming somebody that this thing happened to and all of that. Somebody said your bad character, don't blame it on your zodiac signs. You have a bad character, you have a bad character. But why do people often resort to blaming issues in life, real life issues?
Yeah. Okay, so there's something called external blame, and generally, I think that people do that so as to avoid taking responsibility. Okay, because why would somebody be? Most times people blame their, like you said, zodiac sign. You say, I'm like this because I'm a Leo. I'm like this because I'm a Cancer. Okay, now that is, people do not want to take responsibility for their actions. You see, I'm like anybody that likes to say, this is how I am, deal with it. That is how I am. Are people that, whether they are blaming their personality for it, they are blaming their zodiac signs for it. Sometimes some even blame their environment for it as well. Some blame their parents. Some people say, this is how I was raised. Now, while that can be very, the raising part, the parent raising part, while that can be very accurate in that you find a person acting a way because they were raised that way, you also find that learning and comes in, there's something called nurture and nature. Okay, so that your parents raised you in a certain way, there's a responsibility on you as a person to also, as you grow, begin to retrain yourself. I think there's a Yoruba adage in that line that talks about how a child is raised by the parent, and then the child raises himself or herself again. Okay, and that's a very key thing. So normally people should not be found blaming the society for bad actions. Now people can say they are very angry people because the government is not doing what they ought to do. Now it can be valid that the government is not doing what you ought to do, but your character, your real character, is a reflection of who you are, not necessarily a reflection of the context you are placed in. What do I mean? If I was to, someone was to step on my feet and I give the person a slap, now I can say that the reason why I slapped him was because he stepped on my toes. But that's not exactly accurate, because somebody else would have been stepped on and they would have spoken politely and say, why did you step on me? They give the person an opportunity to apologize and walk away. So you find out that different people in different contexts in the same context rather, would act in different ways. So it's not necessarily that it was because he stepped on me that I slapped him. It was actually because I like to slap, or I'm a slapper, if I put it that way. That is why, I slapped him. So people must learn not to blame the external for their situations. People must learn to be responsible and to be accountable by themselves. Okay, when people can learn that, they'll find out that, and also because every time you blame the external for issues, you miss a learning period, a learning curve. Okay, because when you take responsibility and you hold yourself accountable, what happens is that you can change. You can know that, okay, I have done this wrong. I need to grow in this aspect, and then you can take the necessary step to change. But when you keep blaming the other person, when you keep blaming the circumstance, when you keep blaming the situation, you find out that there's really no change that occurs in you. It's like when when we're in secondary school and say somebody does not do well in an exam, say in UTME or SSC, and the person will say, they gave me F, they gave me D. Okay, the person will say, I have D. Okay, that is not taking responsibility. Do you understand? But when the person takes responsibility, they are able to learn accurately, and they're able to identify learning periods for themselves.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Later, I want to find out how does blame affect relationship, especially between a couple? Because one will say, you are blaming me for this, and not the other will say, but you started it first. So if I did not, you will not, you know, everybody just want to hold on to something. How bad can this be when we always look out for each other's faults? I love the fact that you said you slap somebody. It's not because you love to slap or you're a slapper. You understand? Now, for a man or woman who just hit the husband at will, what do we call that? Okay, so how does blame affect relationship, especially between couples? How?
Okay, so okay, all right. So you find out that for a couple that continue to engage in blame culture, where they are quick to blame each other about something that goes wrong, such a couple would have a very difficult relationship. Okay, because one of the things that would happen is that trust will begin to be eroded. There's something we teach when we are doing counseling for couples, and that's how to have what we call a HOT relationship. AHOT: accountability, honesty, openness, and transparency. Now, when there's a blame culture, honesty, openness, and transparency is thrown out the window. Why? Because the other person feels like, I am consistently being criticized and judged. Okay, so in a marriage situation, you want to avoid having what we call a blame culture. Now, is it wrong to hold each other accountable for a wrong done? No. Okay, but it must be done constructively. And I tell people most times that in a marriage situation, it always takes two to tango. And what that implies is that if we look at the situation critically, there is a role that the other party might have also played in the mistake or the wrongdoing of the other spouse. Okay, so in a marriage situation, what the person wants to do is, you want to find out first is, how did we get here? Why did this happen? How can I support you to ensure this does not happen again? Okay, that is how to find out situations. But if we are constantly saying, you did this wrong, you were the one that started it, it was you that, and there's a lot of pointing of fingers, what you find out is that marriage will be very troubled. They would always constantly be in conflict. They'll always be, having issues they need to solve from time to time, and it will be very unhealthy marriage. And if they have children in that kind of marriage, this thing also trickles over, okay, to the children, okay, because the home will be very toxic. Why? There's a consistency of, pointing fingers and all that. And like I said, the way to go when there's a wrong is to first identify what was done, not who did it first. Okay, what happened is that we lost money. Okay, not who lost the money. And then after we've identified what happened, we then look at, okay, how do we avoid this kind of situation? Because if you are married, the idea of marriage is that two have become one. So the mistake of one is a collective responsibility that both people must, the both of them must own up to. But when you are in a situation where the person that did the wrong is not willing to be accountable, and the other spouse is always very quick to point out the wrong of the other, it's going to be a very, very troubled marriage situation. And that's why sometimes some people divorce, and they say that they have what's it called now, unreconcilable differences. usually it's because of things like blame culture, where one person just gets tired of being told that they're the one that are consistently in the wrong, that the ones always doing the wrong thing. Okay, and they're feeling less of themselves, they are feeling criticized, they're feeling judged. Okay, so blame in a marriage, even in any situation, if it's not constructive, can be very destructive.
It can be very destructive. Okay, it's time for us. We need to take this break. Lekon, you know the family
routine.
And this is how we go about it. We need to take this short break and let's see our word of marvel this morning as we continue with the show. So Lekon is still here. Don't think he's not running away. It's for us and we are for him. Let's take a break for the word of marvel. We'll be right back. Welcome back. It's still Family and Values, and we've been talking about blame. Have you been blaming your husband or you've been blaming your wife? We have been talking with our own Lekon Aramotobi, all the way from Canada, joining us live this morning. Item 7, thank you for our meal. You can always place your order. Lekon, you know what was amazing? I was just smiling when we were coming back. And what I was thinking about is, who is going to take Lekon's meal this morning? And I know the only doctor you have who can take it is you. Tell me. Tell me who I can have. I'm serious. You have a right to meal from item 7 this morning. Who should I give it to? Lekon. Who should I give your meal to? I will pass it on to Toby. You don't pass your meal. I will tell her you did not remember. Send your meal to Toby this morning. She's going to eat it on your behalf and tell you,
how yummy it is.
So thank you, item 7, for always
thank you.
We appreciate it. So you can always get your order from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. every day on. Just go on you see that there are scanners there.
Always.
So, Lekon, it's time for Joy to ask a question as we continue.
Yes, well, before we went on that break, you were saying something where some partners separate due to irreconcilable differences. The other day we were talking about compatibility, and you hear a lot of people say, we are not compatible. After 15-30 years, we are not compatible. And sometimes it worries some when people have lived for that long and they are coming up with irreconcilable differences. Now, I want to ask, what are the healthy ways to avoid mistakes, or to address mistakes, to address blame? Yes, maybe somebody has done something terrible and you want to pour out the blame on that person, but I think there are ways you can put it in such a way that the person will not feel condemned. The person would not feel like I'm always the one receiving. There are people that naturally they are good at being faulty. Anything that you just see them having that fault in them. So what are those healthy ways, that we can address this without it rubbing up on people and making people feel bad and all of that?
All right. So one of the key things, particularly in marriage, and even this applies to an organization, is that we have to shift from a blame culture to a learning culture. Okay, and particularly for marriage, you must also understand that when you point out wrong, what is the context of it? What I mean is, now in an environment that is full of love, okay, if the wife was to come and say, my husband, how did this happen? If I had that in a marriage that already has a blame culture, even if the wife was to come and say the same thing, it will be met with defense and a very antagonistic attitude. So the first thing is you must first create a context of love. Have a context of love in the home so that the other person knows that what this other person wants to point out to me is from a place of love, not from a place of blame. So what that does is that it reduces defensiveness. Okay, so the context must first be a context of love, a context where the other person or both spouses feel safe They know that they can't be judged. They feel safe to speak up without fear or judgment or anything like that. Okay, so the context is very important. Number two is that you must focus on the situation more than the person. Focus on the action that was done, the situation that it caused, more than the person that caused it. Say, for example, the husband went to invest money somewhere, okay, and then like sometimes investment happens with investments, the money did not yield as expected, or the entire money even went. Okay, now the wife can't come and say that that's how you always waste our money in this home. Now, that would be a very destructive blame, because what that will happen is that it will shut down the husband's tendency to want to take business risk or financial risk, or have other ideas on how to improve the family's income. Okay, because he's afraid that if he tries something again and he messes up, his wife is going to have his head. Okay, but if the wife talks about, what, we've lost money at this time. Why did we lose money? Oh, it was because we did not do enough research. We did not find out enough about this investment before we went ahead to do it. That is constructive. That is, you focused more on the mistake and how to correct it more than the person that made the mistake. So in a situation where you're always saying, you always do this, and that's one of the things we must also avoid. Number three, avoid generalizations. Avoid things like, you always do this. That is how you always do. You never allow me. Avoid such words. When you use such words, you are shutting down feedback from the other person, because you're already saying that is how they always do. Okay, so it doesn't allow them, it doesn't even encourage change in them. Okay, so I've said three things. One is, you must change the context, have a context of love, a context of safety, a context where the other person knows that they can't be judged, they are safe. Okay, number two, focus on the situation more than you're focusing on the person. Look at the situation. How did we get here? What can we learn from here? More than pointing fingers at the other person. And then, I said number three is that you must encourage feedback. Don't say things like, you never allow me, you always waste our money, you always waste our food, you never do this, you are always like this. Avoid things like that. And then also, number four will be be accountable. Be quick to take responsibility. So when a person has done wrong, before your spouse comes to point it out, you should have taken responsibility. Okay, so like the example I gave, so if the husband loses money, he shouldn't hide it from the wife, and then until the wife finds out, and then he should take responsibility and say, you know what, my wife, that money that I said I was going to invest, I've lost the money, and I'm sorry that I did. So when a person is quick to take responsibility for their wrong, it is easy for the other person to be able to support them, rather than being the one to find out and then begin to raise it. So on the part of the person that you are the one at fault, be quick to take responsibility for the mistakes you have made. Okay, and then that way it is easier for your spouse to be able to provide support in that ring. And then finally, the spouse must always know that I have married this person. Now, when you marry a person, you can just marry them with their good. Okay, everybody will always make mistakes at different times, because sometimes we expect perfection from our spouses, and sometimes we place too much expectation. We place the expectation of a tree on a seed. Okay, so something your spouse has not become yet, you expect it from them. Okay, so you expect your spouse to be to have financial literacy, but they have not learned financial literacy. Okay, so when you place the position of a tree on a seed, what you have is trouble at different times. So you must manage the kind of expectations we place on our spouse. And let me also add this finally, that this does not mean that you should always sweep mistakes and wrongdoing under the carpet. No, is that you will attend to it, you will deal with it, but you will focus more on solving the situation, on correcting the situation, more than pointing fingers at the person that made mistake.
I love the fact that you said solving situations, and I was actually coming to that aspect. I want to find out now, in the process of trying to solve problems in the family, and you are hearing these unforgivable situations or souls from one of the partners saying, so time, trying to bring you back, throw back to so year or month that certain things happened, and you want to solve this problem, but these episodes of bad memories and faults keep coming, just like Joy mentioned it, you mentioned it, apportioning blames, faults, and this your partner is not even looking at it from that angle, but you are holding on to such situations or episodes of bad memories. How can one have a problem solving, balancing, that by the time you bring it on, how do you solve this when you want to solve a problem? Because you want to find, okay, now we're sitting down as couple, they said we should be finding time to spend time together and relay whatever it is that happened between us. But each time
you bring it on, the other person is saying, remember years back.
No, you remember, I get you now, you are communicating. It's
always like that.
It's always like,
the last one you didn't say sorry.
How do we now, hit the ground running, trying to solve this problem?
And also to add to that, can mutual respect also, when you respect each other, can it help in resolving blame issues? Can mutual respect also?
Thank you.
Yes. Mutual respect is very key. It's very key in avoiding blame culture. And yeah, like you mentioned, that idea of always going back to previous wrong is also a very, allow me to use the word, terrible way to solve conflict. Okay, because there's a way to solve conflict in marriage, and that's why I was saying that you must avoid things like that is how you always do. You never say sorry. You always do the same thing. When you say things like that, you are not really seeking resolution. Okay, because what it shows is that you already have a bias. Unlike you were saying earlier, there are some people that they are just clumsy. Okay, which means that they will always make a kind of mistake. Okay, because of that clumsiness. Okay, so the husband or the wife of that person must know that they must be ready to increase their forgiveness game. Okay, and what forgiveness implies. Now, sometimes depending on the degree of the mistake or how much of an error was done, you may not be able to totally forget. Okay, but the idea of forgiveness is that when you forgive your spouse for something, it does not exist between you again. That means that even if they do the same thing again, if they were to do the same thing again, you will not refer back to the previous one that they did. You will treat that particular matter as a standalone in its own right. Okay, you will not go back and say that was how you did on the 10th of July 2021. Okay, things like that shut down resolution. It makes the person, in marriage, the moment one of the partners begin to feel less of themselves, if they begin to feel criticized in that marriage, what happens is that it begins to create a toxic marriage. it begins to create a toxic relationship. And then that's why some people now say after 10 years or so many years of marriage, they now say that we are not compatible. What exactly is compatibility? Most times the issue is that either two people have strong head or one person has strong head. I mean, one person is that stubborn, or both of them are stubborn and want to have their own way. That is why we always end up with things like irreconcilable differences. That's really the issue. Okay, but as long as both parties are willing to learn and both parties are willing to listen to the others, I think that's one major thing that we need to begin to teach married people more. The art and act of listening. The art and act of listening. Now, when you are listening, you don't do blame game. You don't listen to be able to point out wrong. You don't listen because sometimes, like I was saying, the reason a person makes a particular mistake sometimes can even be because of attention. Okay, a wife can decide to go and waste money, or husband decide to go and waste money just because they want the attention of the partner. Okay, sometimes it's because of a deeper issue that they're having to deal with. Okay, for example, a husband that gets into a gambling situation. Okay, and the wife is just blaming and saying, you always use our money. I don't even know what you're using the money for. Now, she will not know what they're using the money for. You always just blame the husband, always talk and talk, but she will not be able to get to the root of the situation. So what am I saying? Take out the blame. Take out, forgive. Really. Stop going back to the past. Deal with the present in its own way. Deal with it because that is the way you can find out if there's a deeper issue to why that mistake keeps recurring, and then that way you can deal with it and solve the matter.
Thank you so much. I am also really appreciate your spending this first time with you.
Thank you.
It's so beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank
Please
you.
go back to sleep. My
Thank
sister
you.
is waiting for you.
Thank
Go
you.
back. Say hello to Modupe and the kids.
Thank you.
Beautiful
Thank
girls.
you.
Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it.
It's just the calmness for me. Toby is always so calm in all he does.
So much. Have a restful midnight sleep.
I don't know, Toby, you owe me something, right? We'll talk that after the show.
As we round up this morning.
Oh my goodness, as we round up the show this morning, avoid blames. Yes, and if somebody comes to you and has done something terrible, do not revisit the past. Just like our guests have said, stop using you're always doing that. It's in your nature. Some people say it's in your nature to always, come on, so that you don't put the other partner down. I'm Princess Joy Eyo Abu. I'll see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful Wednesday ahead of
Why
life.
you see me running like this is because I have to, we have to rush out of the studio. We're hitting into the next program, which is WhatsApp. So stay tuned for WhatsApp. Tomorrow is going to be another edition of Family and Values, 9 a.m. Join us. Ask how many of you have been sleeping and you are falling in your sleep. Hypnotic jerk. Okay, so that's what we're looking at tomorrow. When you fall in your sleep, you say I want to fall asleep and you're now falling in your sleep. That's what we're talking about tomorrow. And hope to see you tomorrow. Thank you to everyone who has made today's production a great success, and to our supervising producer, Mr. Teslim Ajayi, thank you. And everyone, item 7, thank you all our team. We love you. I still may no see you tomorrow. Bye for now.